Welcome to The Drawdown, a podcast by Bekaert's private equity practice. In each episode, we explore the latest trends in the private equity sector, as well as challenges and opportunities in the ever-changing investment environment.
Welcome to The Drawdown. I'm Cameron Smith with Bekaert's Private Equity Services. In today's episode, we will discuss how commercial due diligence and market studies can boost M&A outcomes, maximizing transaction value. I am joined by Richard Schwartz and Travis Sheldon with our strategy and transactions team. It is great to have you both.
It's great to be here, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Cameron.
Richard, starting off, what are some of the latest trends with both financial sponsors and strategics utilizing commercial due diligence and market studies on transactions?
That's a great question, Cameron. On the buy side, I would say that commercial diligence is evolving because buyers are getting smarter about a lot of overestimation or frankly over-optimism in terms of things like cross-sell or the opportunity to expand the white space. Increasingly in the commercial diligence space, buyers are looking for not only validation of the EBITDA bridge, how it is that they're going to expand EBITDA, but really how strong are the capabilities and how real is the opportunity for this business to grow within its total addressable market. And that comes down to looking really deeply into where can we take price and where can we grow volume as a function of the capabilities, the competencies that the firm has. The flip side, I would say that's causing sellers to have to be that much more prepared as they bring their business to market, such that they can really effectively position not only the fundamentals of their business, the total addressable market, the customers, the products that they sell, but more so that they've got a credible story about how the business is going to grow and that they can come to the negotiation table with that really well laid out and validated through a market study.
It's so interesting to hear that because we know how competitive the deal market is on the buy side and on the sell side. And it sounds like commercial due diligence market studies in our experience may have been utilized more with larger transactions and larger strategics. And I know you guys are going to dig into more of a middle market approach too. Travis, would you go into more detail about the market studies, both from a buy side and sell side perspective?
Yeah, it's a great point, Cameron. I think we were seeing, just 5 years ago, it was fairly rare in the middle market, especially on the sell side, to commission a market study. But we're seeing more and more that these market studies are becoming commonplace, and they help sellers in a couple different ways, and they help the brokers, the investment banks, in a couple different ways as well. The first is that you can just cast a wider buyer net by educating more buyers. Oftentimes in the middle market, you're dealing with smaller or niche businesses, and so there is a degree of educating potential buyers about a niche company. The second is that, as Richard mentioned, we're trying to de-risk a buyer's investment thesis by proactively addressing buyer concerns in a market study. And then the last is that we really do want to strengthen the credibility of that growth story, which can make all the difference when you show up to the negotiating table. And really all of these three things combined can smooth the sale process and even improve the price and the multiple in some cases. On the buy side, for market studies, we often see these types of commercial diligence activities can really serve as a jumpstart for value creation, right? The voice of customer research that you might pick up in a market study can turn into 3 to 5 initiatives that the buyer can do to drive better customer satisfaction or reduce customer churn. The transaction database diligence that we might do can turn into a synergy assessment on either the potential to cross-sell, current customers with new offers or existing offers that a buyer might already have in a platform. So in many ways, buyers are also seeing value post-close in jump-starting their 30, 60, 90-day plans to drive value creation.
Yeah, Travis, you mentioned the middle market. Many of our listeners are in the middle market or the lower middle market, where commercial due diligence and market studies have been trending upward, though still relatively new. So if a lower middle market PE fund is going to commission a market study, let's per se, what are the most important priorities to focus on?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think there's two that I would highlight. The first is that in the lower middle market, you're typically dealing with either a smaller business or one that operates in more of a niche industry. Richard and I have had the opportunity to work on a couple here as an examples, one that operates in portable toilet sanitation, another in concert going and venue pyrotechnics. If I'm a potential buyer, I have no idea how big those markets are, and I may not know the types of customers, how we go to market. So just bringing buyers up to speed on those fundamentals is critical. And the second piece is that the growth story is that much more important. In the lower middle market, you're not going to cost cut your way to value because the companies are smaller. So being able to prove out the growth story is critical. And it's not just that there's headroom, because for smaller companies, of course, there's headroom for growth, but it's about what's my reason to believe that this asset, this target, this management company can actually go capture that value. So those are the two things that we try to focus on for some of these more lower middle market studies.
And Richard, what differentiates a good market study versus a great market study?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cameron. I would say, and I'll use the lower middle market or the middle market lens. A great middle market study is one that really works backward from the investment thesis, whether that's of the buyer or of sellers trying to understand what is it that a buyer would have to believe to want to pick up their business at an attractive exit multiple. We hear from a lot of buyers and sellers that market studies in this part of the market are nice to have versus a have to have, especially when some firms have a one-size-fits-all model. For us, one size, in many cases, fits none. Much more what makes a study great is one that is really right-sized in scope and cost for the specific needs of the buyer or the seller. The other element is around really being more than a vendor, but actually a thought partner, be it to buyers or sellers, around what it is that the market study needs to achieve, and therefore how much focus is on market relative to customer, relative to competition and competitive intensity, relative to the growth story, as Travis spoke to. There, I think what makes it great is a lot of market studies are a lot of illustration of analysis and data. What's great is actually helping and supporting a cohesive narrative on the story and better arguing the value that exists in the business. That type of study really empowers the buyer or the seller, and that's what, in our experience, is great in the lower middle market or middle market context.
Travis, you mentioned some of these stories. You mentioned the portable toilet sanitation, concert pyrotechnics. Do you have an example that you can share with how a market study just truly impacted a transaction?
Yeah, those are two great examples, Cameron. Let me give you a third. So last year, Richard and I worked on a sell-side market study for a manufacturer of countertop juicers and blenders. And this business had a great lifestyle brand and also had an interesting go-to-market model by which 100% of their business was direct to consumer, selling on their website, but also selling through a group of about 300 paid affiliates and influencers. And to Richard's earlier point, we tried to work very closely with the management team and with our investment banking partner around what would a financial sponsor really be looking for, or conversely, what would a strategic sponsor really be looking for in this business. And for a financial, it was really around where are we going to find continued growth and bigger market categories to get into. Juicing at home is a growing category, but it's still relatively niche for those wellness enthusiasts. Conversely, on the strategic side, you might be more enticed about buying the influencer network and the capability around go-to-market, right? If you're a DeLonghi or a Breville or a Shark Ninja, you are used to selling your appliances through brick and mortar channels like Walmart, where the retailer is taking a significant margin. Now you potentially have an asset that can teach you how to go direct. And so it's that capability that ultimately sets the asset apart. And I would say in our study, those are the two most important elements. And the way we arrived at that is working backwards from the point of view of both a financial and a strategic. What ultimately ended up happening for this business is that some of their growth started to taper off, the growth rate. It didn't decline, it just was not growing as fast as it had been for some of its mature product categories. So we made sure our study covered both elements really well. And what ultimately happened is a strategic came to the table to negotiate, given their interest in this direct-to-consumer go-to-market capability, which may have been underrepresented if it were not for the market study.
Well, I think there are very few of us that can say we have not purchased something off of some social media channel at some point. So I believe it. Richard, Travis, thanks so much. This has been really great catching up with you guys over market studies and commercial due diligence. To our listeners, thanks for being here on this episode of The Drawdown. For more information on Cherry Bekaert's strategy and transactions practice, or our commercial due diligence and market studies services in particular, please visit us on our website at cbh.com or contact any one of us on the podcast today. Until next time, take care.
Thank you for listening to The Drawdown, Cherry Bekaert's private equity podcast. The views presented by our guests do not necessarily represent the views of their respective firms. For more information on how Cherry Bekaert serves as a guide forward to private equity funds and their portfolio companies through accounting, tax, and advisory services, please visit cbh.com.